Welcome to Control, Episode 3. We're going downstairs. I'm going to show you my respect for the plot here.
And the poster.
Yeah.
I was 11 years old the first time I saw behind the poster. They told me I imagined it.
That's nice.
I've been trying to pull it down ever since.
Why can't I skip it?
Will you help?
Nope. There we are. We're now in the foyer,
Did I
the
lose
director
you there for a
foyer.
moment? You know what's on my mind. My baby brother, Dylan. 17 years since the men of this bureau took him.
So my big problem with the writing in this game is how disjointed it is. It's not focused. She has a secret invisible friend in her head, and she also has a lost brother, and it just goes randomly between the two. They don't really sync up very well, and well, we'll get to that as we move through the game, but just be aware that as I rag on the game's writing, it's not that I think it's bad, it's just that it's not as good as the levels. The levels are freaking amazing. Case in point, this room. It's freaking amazing. Over here we've got these vertical slats. These are noise dampening elements. You install them into large open spaces where the walls are made out of something hard and there's no carpet anywhere because they keep echoes down. If you've never really looked into them, you should. I mean, just in terms of putting them in your large rooms in your games, just because they look cool. I also like how everything else in here looks. I like these aggressive ceiling lights that are a different tier than the simple flat squares that we saw downstairs or upstairs or wherever that was. And I like the way that we have these waiting areas. This is a nice little waiting area over here. It kind of shows you we're in an American institution with a lot of American flags, but we don't have any brands or anything. We do have some reading. I'm not sure why we have reading, to be honest, because you think that those would contravene the no brands focus. Although maybe Chicken Magazine doesn't trigger any sort of OOP related phenomenon. However, this side is my favorite. This is when I first played the game. This is when I started to know exactly when they were going to do what they were going to do with the building. Because this looks so crisp and so clean and so nice. And it's got this cool little, what is it, a baobab plant or whatever they call it. And it just really sunk itself into my mind. And of course, this is the wall they replace when they go and switch out what rooms go where in a couple of minutes. So, you know, just keep it in mind. Here we've got another one of these settings where we've got a hallway with rooms off to the side. In this case, they really want you to focus on the director's office, so the rooms off to the side are unlit and pretty limited. This is almost identical to the room at the entrance. It's got the same props in the same places with the same screens saying the same things, but it's not lit the same, and that matters a lot. So if you have to reuse things, light them differently. Basic rule they use all the time, works great. Here they're also going to tell us that there's going to be some Metroidvania elements, and then we got a bunch of empty offices. Down here we've got the secretary pool, and we can start to see some of my favorite elements in the game. These are genius. We'll talk about them later. We're definitely getting over to something important. There's a literal red carpet leading up to this room, so obviously it's something important, right? Let's take a look.
Shit. Shit. You want me to pick it up? The murder weapon? Really?
I love this room. There is so much about this room that just shouts. It is a fantastic setup. The most noticeable thing about this room is definitely the light well. The game has no windows, but when it wants to bring in quote-unquote daylight, it does so through these light wells. Where the light comes from is anybody's guess. These do exist in reality. They're not nearly as effective in reality because the sun only shines down them for an hour a day at most. But here in null space or whatever, the sun shines eternally, and so we've got these brilliant light wells. These light wells.
Outside. Was coming here a mistake?
These light wells serve as the brightest source of light that is natural. There are some things that are brighter, like explosions and stuff, but when we want to brighten up a room, we drop a light well in it. And in this case, we've dropped it in the back of the room, meaning that as you enter the room, you're basically blinded by the sudden change in brightness, and you can't even make out the director's face if they're sitting behind the table. You just see their silhouette. It's a really great idea, and it works fantastically. And it's not the only great thing about this room. I love the simplicity of how the desk is just kind of stomped into the middle of this red carpet with a big old screw you. I love the way that the shelves on the sides are carefully broken up so that they're not just repetitive but form a beautiful pattern. I love these things that we don't yet know are doors. I even love the little love seat with all the booze next to it. Because, you know, being a director is kind of hard work some days. And, of course, I love the ceiling. This game is, I would say, the current reigning champion of vertical elements, of ceiling elements. And I'll go into great detail about that as they come up. But just keep that in mind. This is like subtle but also extremely powerful. The idea that the center of the room is this concrete slab lined up perfectly with the red carpet, but above that, it's a honeycomb. Shall we pick up the gun? Alright, let's get to the boring part of the game. Woohoo! Skip.
Look at this place. Where am I?
So if you're going, Craig, you need to stop skipping plot. I don't think I will. I'm not here for the plot. We'll talk about it as it comes up because it's a big part of the game, but I'm really here for the levels. The plot doesn't interest me at all. Now, when I say I'm here for the levels, I specifically mean the oldest house. The levels that happen on the ethereal plane, like this, are really boring. They're just... You know, they sort of remind me of indie games. There are about 1 million indie games about climbing on floating blocks in the middle of space, and this is just more of that. It doesn't feel like they made a choice. It doesn't feel like they decided that their ethereal realm should look like this. It feels like they just went with the norm, which I guess would make sense given the nature of what all of this is. But I would have liked it if they'd come up with something that was a little bit more distinct from all the indie games I play. And if you haven't picked up on it, I'm not terribly excited by gunplay. It is not the most exciting of play styles. Fine. Jerks. Not having good luck with the gun today. I'm trying to headshot them, but I guess these people don't take headshot damage. Oh well. Hello. How are ya? So this game has a lot of accessibility options, including a bunch of combat options. I did turn on invincibility, not invincibility, but undyingness, just because it takes forever to load. So I don't want to have to sit there and try and edit my files around a loading screen. We skipped a whole bunch of stuff. Basically, we picked up this weird-ass gun. I really like this weird-ass gun because it breathes. Watch. Take a breath. There, see that? That's a really cool idea, a gun that breathes. We met the board, which is basically just a bunch of talking voices that give us weapons. And we also got to hear a couple of words from the dead guy. All of the stuff is very carefully calibrated to not tell you anything, and we'll talk about that later. I just don't like... To me, this kind of approach feels cheap. when you can tell they're obscuring things just to be obscure. Like, oh, it's going to be a big surprise later. But if you've seen this kind of thing before, it's not, because the surprise is always the same surprise. Oh well, it's something that appeals a lot to most people, and just because I'm complaining about it doesn't make it bad. But that's it for this episode. In the next episode, we'll go shoot some folks.